Efuru by Flora Nwapa, Chapter 13. When Gilbert returned from the Great River, he was told that his good friend Sunday Eneke was on leave. Gilbert was happy about this and wanted to see his friend at once, but the fish and groundnuts bought from the Great River had to be sold before he was free to make social calls. It was therefore a busy time for him. He came home each day from the markets very tired and slept as soon as his head touched the pillow. When the commodities were sold, he went to see his friend Sunday. Sunday was in the army and had come home on leave for the first time since he was recruited. He and Gilbert attended the same elementary school and both left in the same year. Sunday had wanted to be a teacher, but when the war came, he joined the army. He did not join the army voluntarily or out of any conviction whatever. It happened in a most dramatic way. A very impressive British Army officer, he must have been a lieutenant, came to their school one afternoon. He had a brief talk with the headmaster, and Sunday, together with 4 other huge boys, joined the army. His parents wept the day he said goodbye to them. His mother could not get over it. She wept and nagged her husband, who was as foolish as to send her son to school. If her son had been one of the simple, illiterate boys in the village, he would not have gone to the army. No soldier had ever returned to the little town since the war began, but they had heard fantastic stories about soldiers. Soldiers ate human flesh. If they were hungry and there was no food to eat and nobody to eat either, they cut their own flesh and ate it raw. If they were thirsty and there was no water to drink, they drank their urine. Sunday's mother heard these stories, so each time she remembered them, her blood ran cold. Gilbert and Sunday were happy to see each other, and they soon fell to talking about old times. "Do you still play football?" Sunday asked. "I don't play anymore. When you leave school, you hardly do any of the things you were doing when you were in school. Even if I had wanted to play, people would have laughed at me, and some would even attribute it to irresponsibility. I continue with my football in the army. Your own case is understandable. I don't know how to play now. I would give anything to live that life again. Do you still remember that match we played against Amuku?" Both men began to laugh. "What didn't we do to win?" Sunday asked. "I still remember the night the captain and I went to see the Dibia, who gave us a talisman, each for the team. The talisman did not work, for we were beaten. You remember our goalkeeper?" "I remember," Sunday replied. He complained that several times in the goal mouth he saw over 20 balls without knowing which to catch. And of course he always caught the wrong one. And so we were beaten by, I think, 4 goals to 1. "Yes, 4 goals to 1. And you remember that we were all searched by the referee before we started the match. The referee saw nothing, for we buried the charm that the Dibia gave to us at night." "And where did we bury it? Can you remember?" "In the center of the field. The charm was to demoralize our opponents and confuse them. Despite all this, we were beaten. Our supporters were very sad. Some of them attributed our defeat to the cry of a strange bird that flew past us before we started the match. But our captain excelled himself that day. He was simply wonderful. He played as he had never played before. The gods were against us. We were not destined to win." "And where is he now?" Gilbert asked. "Our captain, Eric the Field, so we nicknamed him in those days. He was a wonderful center half. His shots were terrific, no goalkeeper could stand them. He had a style of his own. He joined the army, and now that the war is over, he has a good job. I saw him when I was returning from Lagos. His wife cooked a most delicious lunch for me." "Who is his wife?" "You remember that very beautiful girl called Agnes, who was in Standard 4 when we were in 6? The girl who nearly always took the first position. She is tall and fair," Gilbert added. "Yes, she is tall and fair, but don't mistake her for that big girl who was in Standard 4 for 4 years, Sunday said, laughing. "No, I know the one you mean. She was a member of the choir and sang beautifully." "Exactly, that's the girl. So Eric married her at last, and you say they are happy?" They are very happy. It is a joy to be with them. You remember on many occasions, Agnes' mother came to the school to report to the headmaster that Eric was a bad influence on her daughter and begged the headmaster to use his influence in putting an end to the association of her daughter and Eric. I remember very well. Agnes made it clear to her mother that she would rather commit suicide than live to be someone else's wife. In the end, her mother gave in. I am happy that they are happy. Sunday's sister returned from the stream. She put down her water pot and ran inside to change. "Who is that?" Gilbert asked. "Don't you know her? She is my youngest sister, Nkonyeni." "Your youngest sister? The little girl who usually helped you with your books when she saw you returning from school?" "Yes, she is the one. She has grown so big. Girls grow so rapidly these days. I wouldn't have recognized her in the streets." Gilbert remembered the day Nkonyeni wept because he called her his wife. Sunday and Gilbert were outside doing their arithmetic homework when Nkonyeni returned from the stream, carrying a very small water pot. She was about 9 years old at the time. She was beautiful and wore large red beads round her waist. Her body was very smooth, for after swimming in the lake, she rubbed some coconut oil and plunged into the lake again. The effect was remarkable. Beautiful beads of water formed on her body. They had not all disappeared by the time she got home. Gilbert helped her with her miniature water pot and was so indiscreet as to call her his wife. Nkonyeni was upset. She threw away the cloths she used in balancing the water pot on her head and wept, railing abuses on Gilbert, who dared to call her his wife. Gilbert and Sunday laughed and watched her mischievously. "Oh Puta," she called her brother, for that was Sunday's pagan name. "Please tell that person not to call me his wife again. I am not his wife." "You are my wife whether you like it or not. I am going to pay the dowry today, this very day." The little girl began to cry all over again. She rolled herself on the ground and dirtied her beautiful smooth body. This angered her brother Sunday. "Enough of it, you little fool. If you don't stop that nonsense, I shall get a whip and break it on your body. Do you hear? Look at her face. Won't you be glad to have somebody like Gilbert as your husband, you fool? You dare shout again." Nkonyeni kept quiet. She was fond of her eldest brother and so did not want to annoy him. So she wiped her tears, and as she was entering the room, she eyed Gilbert in such a way that the two boys could not help laughing. "Don't cry, my wife," Gilbert teased again. "And don't eye me like that. I have already told your mother, you must be my wife." Nkonyeni wanted to shout again, but she looked at her brother, shot another ugly look at Gilbert and muttered, "When my mother comes, I shall tell her that you called me your wife," she said in between sobs. Gilbert chuckled as he remembered this incident which happened some 10 years ago. "And what is she doing now?" Gilbert asked his friend Sunday. "She is in school. She is now in Standard 4. I shall send her to college if she does well." "That's good. I am happy to hear it. Aha, what about Matthew? That very huge boy who was in school with us. Where is he now?" "Matthew is in Onitsha. He is a big trader now. He has 3 wives and lives in a big house with his family." "I am happy he is doing well. You remember that he was expelled by our headmaster because he wrote a love letter to one of the school mistresses." "Yes, and he was given 24 strokes of the cane before the expulsion. And when he had the last stroke, he turned round and asked the headmaster, 'Is it all? Have you finished?' The 2 men laughed and shook their heads. "A tough boy he was," Gilbert said. Then the headmaster gave him his testimonial with unsatisfactory written in bold letters, and he tore the testimonial to shreds. The 2 men said almost simultaneously, "He appeared so irresponsible in those days, but I knew he was a boy who knew his mind and knew what he wanted. He was the type of boy the authorities could not like." "And the headmaster, where is he now?" The wicked soul, he is heading a school in a bush place. I heard from an unreliable source though that he flogged a boy so mercilessly that the boy's parents poisoned him and now his bottom is as big as a barrel. The two men laughed. Obviously the story was not true, but then that was the only befitting end of the wicked headmaster. I hear you are married. Sunday switched on to a more personal conversation. Yes, I am married. This is the 4th year. Pity you did not marry that girlfriend of yours. I hear she has been married to a very wealthy man who sent her overseas to learn dressmaking. You mean Clara? We were too young then to think of marriage, remember? But I was very fond of her. How many children have you? Sunday asked innocently. I have a boy, but he is not the son of my wife. My wife has no child. I am sorry. And does your wife know about the boy? I haven't told her about the boy. You haven't told her? Why? I haven't the courage. If she had a child, it would be easy to confess to her. I am sure it is going to upset her. You see, it is one of those things we men cannot avoid. I went to Ndoni, met this girl, and the result is a bouncing baby boy. I have not told my mother either, though I know she will be very glad. If I were you, I would tell my wife. Don't give her the chance of hearing it from other people. How old is the boy? He is nearly 2 years old. And you say nobody knows about it in this small town? Nobody knows about it. The mother of my son lives in Ndoni with her parents. I see. And you, when are you getting married? As soon as I can pay the dowry. Ex-servicemen have made things difficult for us. Now a man who has 4 grown-up daughters counts himself a very wealthy man. Each daughter will bring to the father at least £100 in cash, in raw cash. You are right, but you must get married. It is not in our culture to remain unmarried. Have you anybody in mind? What is the use having anybody in mind? I had one in mind for several years, and before I came home, a fellow ex-serviceman snatched her from me. When I have the money, I shall have one in mind. Both men laughed. What was the use of having one in mind when there was no money to pay the dowry? Gilbert remembered the Proverbs which said that however good a suitor might be, he was never given a bride for nothing. Nkonyeni came out, greeted Gilbert shyly, and told her brother that she was going to choir practice. Do you know me? Gilbert asked. You are Sunday's friend and you are married to Efuru. She knows you, Sunday said laughing. Nkonyeni left them. It is a good thing you are sending her to school, but it is a waste sending them to school, you know. I don't understand, Sunday said in surprise. Well, I mean really that boys should be given the preference if it comes to that. If you had a little brother, for instance, and there is just enough money for the training of one, you wouldn't train Nkonyeni and leave the boy. You are right. Sometimes these girls disappoint one, you know. How? Asked Sunday. They get married before the end of their training and the money is wasted. You are right, but it is the fault of us men. We should allow them to finish their schooling. And where does it all end? In the kitchen, Gilbert answered his own question. It does not always end in the kitchen when the girl is allowed to finish. She can teach and thus bring money in that way. Gilbert rose up to go. You are going very soon. Won't you stay a little longer? Sunday began to plead. No, I must go now. I have been out for a long time, and you remember it is only 3 days since I returned from Ndoni. I have not had time with my wife since then. Come and see us sometime.